Okay, well, you've heard us chatting a little bit. Good morning, everybody here in the U.S. Actually, I guess it's good afternoon on the East Coast, and to friends in Europe that are listening in, good afternoon, and welcome back to the Living in Oneness Summit. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Coordinating Director for Humanities team, and I'm one of the hosts of this summit. Today is day 9 of the summit, so I want to invite you to buckle your seatbelts, as it were, because we've got a really exciting program that's directly ahead. We have over 16,000 people that are registered for the Living in Oneness Summit, and registrations are still climbing. We have a large listening audience with us here today. We are broadcasting live each day with at least 2 programs, and we're talking about how we can come fully alive as part of the divine. That's the focus of this summit. I'd like to thank each of you, the listeners who are listening in live and who are listening via the audio links. As a reminder, we have this $100 discount during the summit for those who purchase the upgrade packages. These upgrade packages allow you to come back and again listen to the wisdom being shared and to forward that some of that wisdom to friends and family. MP3s, transcripts, and CDs are available from the 30-plus leaders who are part of the program this year, and also we're including in one of the packages the 2013 program, which included Panache Desai, Ken Wilber, Urban Laszlo, and Joan Borisenko. If you're on Instant Teleseminar, I want to invite you to put your name, city, and country in the question window. Please also share your inspirations that you have for the Living in Oneness Summit, and any questions that you have for Bruce Lipton. We're going to get to at least a few during the hour. You are going to love our guest for this hour. He is going to share so much wisdom, but he also embodies oneness. You can feel it if you've been listening in. You can feel Bruce's energy. I'm going to introduce him now. Bruce Lipton is a scientist and lecturer. He received his Ph.D. at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville in 1971. He served as an associate professor of anatomy at the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine, but he resigned his tenured position to pursue independent research integrating quantum physics with cell biology. Lipton returned to academia as a research fellow at Stanford University's School of Medicine to test his hypothesis in 1987 to 1992. His ideas concerning environmental control were substantiated in 2 major scientific publications. The new research revealed the biochemical pathways connecting the mind and body and provided insight into the molecular basis of consciousness and the future of human evolution. Bruce has taken his award-winning medical school lectures to the public and is currently a popular keynote speaker and workshop presenter on topics of conscious parenting and the science of complementary medicine. I also want to mention that Bruce is a great friend of Humanities team and Global Oneness Day through promotion and participation. And welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, Bruce. It's great to have you with us.
Steve, I'm just so happy to be here because we are going through these very perilous times. It appears when we look at the newspaper, or watch TV, and we start to see all these crises all over the world, all at one time. And it's interesting because it's sort of like being among the trees and asking, where's the forest? That we see all these individual crises like individual trees, but the truth is all of the crises are actually symptoms of one major aspect of life, and that is life as humans have been living it is no longer sustainable. And in fact, we are facing now the 6th mass extinction of life on this planet. 5 times in the history of this planet, life was thriving, and then some event happened, and it just got wiped out. Some of these events are attributed to things like an asteroid or comet hitting the planet and just turning the environment upside down. But each time, life died out and then started over again. And right now, science has recognized as a fact, so it's not a suggestion, that we are losing species faster than in previous mass extinctions. And so that, according to science, the way we are impacting the environment and affecting the web of life, that we are actually providing for our own extinction because we are now into that extinction phase. But what science has found that really is critical is that the extinction we're facing is due to human behavior. and basically says if we continue life just the way we're doing it right now, extinction looms very, very quickly. And this is not hundreds of years. This is in decades that this thing will rapidly just turn upside down. So is there anything we can do about it? And the answer is obviously there's something we can do about it. We have to change the way we're living and responding to each other as well as the way we respond to the environment in which we live. And then we'll be able to adapt into a newer, more evolved world. So your particular program is very critical because it says, look, let's stop and pay attention. Let's take a look and see what's going on because we are indeed involved in a major evolutionary process.
Yes, we are. And for those that got here early, you heard Bruce speaking, and he was saying that this evolution that's going on is not changing our bodies. It's changing our thoughts. We're going to go much deeper into that. Gosh, there's so much ground to cover here, Bruce. I've actually got your book, The Biology of Belief, here, and some of the listeners have also come in with, I've read that book 3 times, Biology of Belief, and are making comments. So, and of course, you've written other incredible material as well. I thought maybe a place to begin is just in your book. You talk about the scientific epiphany that was back earlier in your career that, as you call it, shattered your beliefs in the nature of life. Do you want to just bring that in? It kind of, it was it seemed like in the sequence of your professional career that was an early one that really got things going.
Well, it certainly shook up my entire world because I'm a cellular biologist, and I was teaching, for example, in a medical school to medical students the nature of how cells and organs and tissues work. And at the same time, I was cloning stem cells. And it's just to let people understand, I was cloning stem cells 47 years ago. At that time, in this world, there were only a handful of us that even knew what the heck a stem cell was. Now, today, everybody understands, hears about stem cells, but this was way back pioneer days. And what was very interesting about it, of course, is I'm teaching medical students about genes controlling life and a concept we refer to as genetic determinism, which suggests that the genes that you receive at the moment of conception are a blueprint for your life, and your life unfolds according to the genes that you inherit. So if you inherit some genes like cancer genes and things like that, then your fate is already predetermined that you were going to experience or manifest specific diseases or problems. And basically, when you teach something like that to an audience, you have to really stop and say, well, what am I fundamentally teaching people? And what we're teaching people is that they're victims of heredity, in a sense that, well, you didn't pick the genes as far as we know, and you can't change the genes if you don't like them, and the genes control your life. Then you realize, oh, my God, I have no control over my life. These genes are controlling it. And once you tell somebody they're a victim, you've disempowered them because basically they say, well, I can't do anything about it. I don't know, now I have to go pay somebody else to fix my life at this point. And so therefore, we're teaching disempowerment. And while I was teaching disempowerment without recognizing it as such at the time, I was teaching science at the time, I was also cloning stem cells. And stem cells are the equivalent of embryonic cells. And you need them in your body for a very powerfully important reason, and that is this. A human body, while we see it as a single entity, is actually, that's a misperception. A human body is comprised of 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. The human, by full definition, represents a community of cells. So we have a community of 50 trillion cells under our skin. And every day when we just have normal life, we lose hundreds, listen to the number, hundreds of billions. It's just an amazing number of cells that you can't even contemplate in your head. Hundreds of billions of cells every day are dying just from normal aging or damage or just any, issues of just trauma. And every day you lose this. As a matter of fact, every 3 days you replace the entire cellular lining of your digestive tract. And this is like 1 trillion cells or something like that. So you're losing cells every day. Well, there's got to be a very important, aspect about who's replacing these cells. Because if they don't get replaced, then obviously you can't survive. You'll lose hundreds of billions of your cells every day, and then you'll just die out in a very short time. but we have in our body stem cells, and stem cells are the equivalent of embryonic cells. In fact, the moment before you're born, if I take a tissue biopsy, just before you're born, and I look at the tissue and I say, oh, you see this cell here? This is an embryonic cell. And then I say, look, wait 1 minute. The child is born. I take the same tissue biopsy, look at the exact same cell. I go, oh, this is a stem cell. And basically, because once you're born, I can't call it an embryonic cell. But in truth, a stem cell is the equivalent of an embryonic cell. Its function is to help replace the loss of cells that we experience every day. So here's the simple experiment. I put one stem cell in a culture dish, and it divides every 10 or 12 hours. After a week, I've got 50,000 cells in the Petri dish, but the most important aspect is every cell is genetically identical because they came from the same parent. So I have 50,000 genetically identical cells, and here's the experiment. I split the cells into 3 different Petri dishes and changed the culture medium that the cells live in. So just a reference, cells are like fish. They live in a fluid. So if you cut yourself open, fluids leak out because we have like an aquarium inside that supports all the cells. So I create an artificial culture medium, and this is the environment that cells live in. But I changed the chemistry of the culture medium in each of the 3 dishes that I have genetically identical cells in. And in dish 1 with environment A, the cells form muscle. In dish 2 with environment B, the cells form bone. And dish C with environment 3, or what I'm getting at is the third environment, is again different. The cells form fat cells. And when I looked at the experiment, the immediate thing that hit me, of course, is here I'm teaching medical students genes control life, and here I have genetically identical cells in 3 dishes with 3 different fates. And it was like, well, what controlled the fate of the cells? And the answer was, well, not the genes. They all had the same genes. It was a change in the environment. And this really led me on to a new understanding because I'm teaching that genes control life. And, in fact, one of the experiments that I was involved with in graduate school was an experiment called enucleation. The nucleus of the cell has all the genes, and that's why in the textbooks, even at this very minute, the textbooks talk about the nucleus of the cell as the brain of the cell. And they say that because if we believe that genes control life and the genes are essentially all in the nucleus, then by definition the nucleus is a source of control, hence the brain. And yet my studies, which were replicating experiments from 1900, I pull out the nucleus of a cell, and the cells continue living. And they can live for 2 or 3 months without any nuclei, no genes in them. And their lives are very complicated. And big point about this is, well, how can a cell have this very complicated life and no genes in it? Because we were saying genes control these cells, and yet they had absolutely wonderful control and no genes. So this all of a sudden really, rocked my world, because in my lab, I'm seeing some results that completely differ with everything I'm teaching medical students. So basically, I kept repeating experiments. My colleagues looked at this as, an artifact or just, something weird. And I was saying, this is not an artifact or weird. I can repeat this experiment every day, and you can see the same results. It's predictable. But at that time, around 1970, the scientific world was so enamored with genes that my research was suggested that genes were perhaps not as important as we were thinking they were. Never caught on to anybody. As a matter of fact, they just looked at my stuff as, oh, that's just something going on that's not really important. I had to leave the university because I realized I cannot go in that classroom and teach medical students now that genes control life when I have obvious proof that the genes are not controlling. And so I left, and in that process got involved with getting into quantum physics, which was a physics that none of my scientific colleagues had any understanding of it, neither did I, but ultimately recognizing that physics are mechanisms. That's why we talk about Newtonian physics or Newtonian mechanics or quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Physics are mechanisms. And therefore, if you want to understand cell biology and you're a biologist, you still need to know the physics, because the physics are the underlying mechanisms. And as I was reading into quantum physics, I realized, oh my God, none of my colleagues have any awareness of this new physics and how these mechanisms apply to biology. As I started to apply it, I started to come across a completely different understanding about biology, that the brain of the cell is the skin or the membrane. I always like to say the membrane. And the significance is the skin of the cell reads the external environment, it reads the internal environment simultaneously, and therefore the skin is in a position of adjusting the biology in response to what's going on in the world. My research then led me to an understanding of the cell membrane, and it was back in 1980. By that point, I'd been working on the cell membrane for about 10 years, trying to understand how does the brain of the cell work by studying the cell membrane. And there I was one night, about like 1:59 in the morning. You have to realize up to this moment, I am not a spiritual person. I let that go when I was a kid because there were so many spiritual offerings from people that even in my childlike eyes, I looked at these people and thought, their words don't match their lives in any way. The words are very nice, but their lives don't match. And I lost interest in that, and that's why I went into science. So here I am, completely not spiritual, working on the cell membrane. And on this particular evening, I rewrote the definition of the cell membrane in a different way than I had been looking at it over 10 years. And here's what I wrote. The cell membrane is a liquid crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. And what was relevant about that in 1985 was I just bought my first Macintosh, and I had my book from Radio Shack, a simpleton book of understanding your microprocessor. And what happened when I wrote this definition of cell membrane, I said, oh my God, I've heard that definition somewhere. And I realized I just read that in this book, Understanding Your Microprocessor. So I open up the book, and there it is in the introduction. A computer chip is a crystal semiconductor with gates and channels. I go, wow, what a coincidence. The cell membrane and computer chip have the same definition. But as I started to look at it more carefully and function-wise, I realized something very profound, and that is this. The cell membrane is not analogous to a computer chip, which means a cell membrane is not like a computer chip. A cell membrane is homologous to a computer chip. Homologous means the same as. That when you look at the structure and the function, a cell membrane is a carbon-based computer chip compared to our industrial silicon-based computer chip. And what I also saw was that the nucleus of the cell was a hard disk, and the programs are called genes. And the significance about that is we were teaching genetic determinism, that it's read-only memory. In the sense, these are your genes, this is your life. But the research that I was seeing about these stem cells and how they respond to the environment said it's not read-only memory, it's read-write memory. That whatever the genes are, the organism, the cell, can change the readout of the genes based on the environment. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is profoundly important because it says you are not a victim of your genes. By changing your environment, you can change the genetic readout. And the simple bottom line, just a obvious observation is I take a dish of cells with culture dish, and I take it from a good environment and move it to a bad environment, less than optimum. The cells get sick and they start to die. And if I had a conventional allopathic medical doctor look at my cells, they go, Bruce, your cells are sick, we should give them some medicine. And I go, absolutely not. If you want the cells to get well, you take the dish from the bad environment, move it back into the good environment, and instantaneously the cells recover. The point was simple. The cells represent a complement to the environment. In a good environment, the cells are healthy. In a bad environment, the cells are sick. And rather than trying to adjust the biology of the cells, which is what we do in conventional medicine, you're sick, let's give you medicine and adjust your biology. The new insight said, no, don't mess with the biology of the cells, change the environment. And when you change the environment, the cells will come back to health again. Well, in this process, there were two things, and I'll try to get this fast, Steve, because it's the whole introduction, then we can go from there. What I started to recognize was very clearly this, is that there's the environment that directly affects the cells, and that this environment via the cell membrane then adjusts the genetics of the genes in the nucleus. And what I also started to recognize was this point was that there are no two people that are biologically the same. And what I mean by that is that I cannot take my tissues or organs out of my body and put it into any one of your bodies, because the moment I do that, your immune system will say, not self. And the immune system will then destroy the foreign cells. So basically what it really says is this: cells have identity to them. Your identity is coded on your cells, and it's different than the identity coded on cells of another person. So there are no two people with the same identity. Well, this is the foundation of what makes people different from each other. Well, my understanding of that time was that the differences between people are related to a set of receptors on the surface of the cell that science studies a bunch of them. They call them self-receptors. And which is interesting, self-receptors. So when they do an organ transplant, you can't just take anybody's organ and stick it in your body. What you have to do is look at your self-receptors, look at the self-receptors of the donor, and it's like a giant combination lock. And if you can get a large number of self-receptors, you're never going to find two of them the same. But if you can get a large number of receptors that are shared between the recipient and the donor, then it means that the immune system won't be so aggressive in rejecting the tissue. So that's what's called tissue matching. That's how you find out if this person can offer their organ to this person, is how close the receptors are. Okay, so conventional medicine is associated with the physical, mechanical world, looks at the receptors, said the receptors are what make people different from each other. And it's like, oh, my understanding has gone a little deeper than that. It's like, no, receptors are, by definition, receivers. They're antennas. And the significance is that the self-receptors are on the outside of the cell. So basically it says that my cells receive an environmental signal that is picked up by these antennas that plays through my cell. And your cells have a different set of antennas responding to a different set of environmental signals. And there was this moment there, it's like 1:59 in the morning. I'm not spiritual or anything at this moment. I'm working on the mechanics of the cell membrane, come to the understanding that a person's identity is due to a set of receptors, which, let me tell you, people and cells are structurally similar. Your skin is the source of your brain. That happens in embryology. The skin of the cell is the brain. Your skin has receptors: eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch. You read the environment with these receptors. Well, the cell membrane has similar kind of receptors, not as complex, and we also have the receptors for self. And at that moment, I looked at the receptors and realized something. Oh, my God, my identity is something picked up by the receptors. And that the identity is apparently on the outside of the cell because the receptors are on the outside of the membrane facing outwards. And that instant, it said, oh, my God, I am not in here. I am receiving an identity broadcast from the environment that is picked up by my cells and then plays through my biology. And it hit me instantaneously. I said, wait a minute, I cannot die because my identity is not inside this system. My identity is a broadcast. So my body is like a television set, and I'm playing the Bruce show that's picked up by these antennas. Well, this was profound because the moment that happened, it's like, oh my gosh, we are not directly the body. We play through the body. We're a spirit playing into a body. And this was just profoundly, shocking to my whole worldview, because first thing it said, you cannot die because you are not in the cells. So it's sort of like, I related to an analogy like a television set with an antenna watching a TV show, and the television picture tube breaks or something. You say the television's dead. You go, yeah, the television's not playing anymore. There's nothing coming across. It's dead. And then I ask the question, well, the television died, but is the broadcast still there? Of course the broadcast is still there. I say, how do you know it's there? You say, well, you get another TV, plug it in, turn it on, and tune it to the station, and you're back on air again. And so it's like, oh, my God. This accounts for, coming back into life again, being reborn again, reincarnation. Why? a future embryo shows up with a complex set of receptors that you have on your cells right now, and that embryo will receive the same broadcast that you're receiving right now. It'll be you, but in a different body. And so all of a sudden you realize it doesn't make a difference if it's male or female, if it's white or black. That's the television set. You are the broadcast. And when I realized that, I said, oh, my God, we don't live inside this. We're outside. Well, there was a moment of profound humor, the way I see it. I'm, of course, not spiritual, and then, like, 1 minute later, I'm looking at this and going, oh, my God, I'm not in here. By that definition, I represent some form of information that's in the environment and stays in the environment, even if the body comes and goes. And at that moment, it shocked me because I realized, okay, there's a spiritual element to me, and there's a physical element to me, the body and the spirit. So, of course, my very curious mind at that moment, I asked a question of myself. I said, why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be a spirit? And then the answer welled up from my cells, and the answer came right to the forefront and flooded me, and it was like the most profound and funny answer. It was, I asked myself, why have a spirit and a body? Why not just be a spirit? And from the cells, the answer came up in the form of a question, in fact. I said, why have both? And the cells said, Bruce, if you're just a spirit, what does chocolate taste like? And all of a sudden I said, oh, my God. The body is a mechanical device in a sense that reads the environment through all our receptors, eyes, taste, touch, sound, pain, pressure, temperature, emotions. These are experiences. I say, yeah, but how does it work? I say, we have a broadcast coming into the receptors, and the nervous system takes our life experiences and converts them into neural activity, which is electromagnetic vibrational frequency. So you might taste a piece of chocolate, but the nervous system doesn't see chocolate, it gets a vibration. You might see a sunset, but the brain doesn't see a sunset, it receives a pattern of vibrations. And what I started to realize was we come into this body to experience sensation, and we come into this body to create. And here's a guy who was not spiritual, and 1 minute later it says, oh, my God, we're spiritual. And then I offer this as a potential great cosmic joke. I offer this, and here's what it is. We have a perception that we live our lives, and then we die, and then we go off to some place called heaven if you do it right or something. And my research sort of said, wait a minute, we are born into heaven, because this is where we come to create, and this is where we come to experience. And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, the whole joke is we're waiting for some afterlife and wasting this creative moment in this world to create the most beautiful things. And you say, well, how can you call this place heaven? Look at all the aggravation and the anxiety and the stress and all this other stuff. It doesn't look like heaven. And that led me to the next realization. And that is that we've been programmed, and this becomes very necessary. Steve, I'm trying to wrap this up so we get to the question. So hold on, I'm getting there. So basically, it goes like this: let's first connect the petri dish of stem cells to the human, because people say, Bruce, that's nice. The work you did was in a culture dish, but what does that have to do with people? So let's make that correct right now, and it goes like this. I said that the culture medium, the environment in the culture dish, the chemistry of the culture medium controls the fate of the cells. I mentioned to you that the human body is not a single entity, but a community of 50 trillion cells. The simple fact is, a human body is a skin-covered petri dish with 50 trillion cells inside. And we have culture medium. The culture medium is called the blood. In fact, when we create culture medium for cells in tissue culture, we try to emulate the composition of the blood to make it as close to home for those cells as possible in the plastic dish. So, simple point. You are a plastic, you're not your skin-covered dish. You have 50 trillion cells inside. You have a culture medium that controls the fate of the cells through the chemistry of that culture medium. The culture medium is called the blood. Here we go. This is the whole mind-body thing in one scientific wrap-up. It's simple. The brain is the chemist that controls the composition of the blood. I said, yeah, but what chemical composition should be in the blood? Because it was the chemical composition that controlled the fate of the cells in the plastic petri dish. So in the skin-covered dish, the composition of the blood controls the fate of your cells. And I say, the brain is the chemist. And I say, yeah, but what chemistry should the brain create? And then I go, it's based on the mind, the interpretation of the world around us. I'll give a simple example. If you're sitting there and you open your eyes and you see someone you love come into your vision, your mind interprets that person as a love entity, and as a result, the mind causes the brain to release wonderful chemicals such as dopamine, which provides pleasure, oxytocin, which creates bonding relationships, vasopressin, which increases your attractiveness, growth hormone, which increases the vitality of your cells. So the simple point is this: when you open your eyes and see someone you love, the chemistry of the blood is greatly enhanced by factors that enhance life. That's why, simple point, when people fall in love, they glow, they're healthy, they're vibrant. I go, yeah, because the culture medium has got this wonderful chemistry in it which supports the cells. And I say, okay, wait, same person opens their eyes, sees someone that scares, someone that scares them. I go, oh. In that case, the brain releases completely different chemicals in fear. It releases stress hormones and inflammatory agents. And a simple point, if I take the chemicals released by a brain in fear and put them into a plastic dish with cells, guess what? The cells stop growing and die. Hence the nature fear kills, because the chemistry of the blood in fear does not support the growth and maintenance of the body. Fear is protection. So fear shuts down the growth of the system as we get into like walling ourselves off, protecting ourselves from the environment. What's the simple point? What's the conclusion? The cell biology is not controlled by the genes. It's controlled by the culture medium called blood. But the culture medium called blood is controlled by the brain, which in turn, the chemistry is influenced by our interpretation, which is our mind. And therefore, we now have the direct connection between mind and body. And so it's not a new age idea at all. It's an actual reality. As you change your thoughts and attitudes or beliefs, your emotions, you are changing the chemistry of your culture medium, and the chemistry of your culture medium controls your cells. And all of a sudden you start to say, oh my goodness, my genes don't control my life. My mind controls my life. Because as I change my perceptions, I change the genetic activity, and more so, the new science, which I saw this work was like pioneering or presaging the new science called epigenetics. And I'll get to the end right now, Steve. Epigenetics is the new science, and you say, well, it sounds like genetics. I go, it's a revolution in this regard. When I was teaching in medical school, I was teaching what we call genetic control, which literally means control by genes, so that your fate is determined by your genes. The new science is now called epigenetics or epigenetic control. And I say, it sounds the same. I say, no, epi means above. So when I say epigenetic control, I am literally saying control above the genes. And this is where the mind comes in. Through the action of the mind, you can rewrite the genetics. So it's not a read-only gene. It's a read-write gene. I can change the genetic readout by how I respond to the environment. I can create thousands of variations of proteins from each gene blueprint just by the way I look at the world. Meaning, some of the variations of the genes can enhance health, and some of the variations can cause disease. So when you talk about, let's say, cancer, we find that only about 10% of cancer has an actual genetic linkage, with 90% of cancer being due to lifestyle and our perceptions and responses to life altering the epigenetic readout of normal genes and causing them to create a cancer gene. And when you change your beliefs and attitudes and perceptions, you can recover from cancer. And therefore, this is a malleable, changeable system, dynamically adjustable to our perception of the world. And the perception, I'll just close with this. You may live in the healthiest of worlds, But if you perceive that your world is providing you with fear, it scares you, it's threatening to some degree, and it's really not. It's just your perception, just your belief. Your cells don't get to see the real world. They only get to see the world that the brain sends information to the cells. So a liver cell doesn't know what's going on in your real world, but what it reads is the information coming from the brain. If I have a perception of fear, then the chemistry of fear will go to my liver cell and adjust its biology to protect itself. And does the liver cell know that the environment is really, fearful, or maybe the environment's wonderfully okay? The liver cell doesn't know that. All it does is get information from the brain, which is interpreting the mind. So the significance about that is that the perception is more powerful than the actual reality. And in fact, this is the most recent finding in some research at UCLA on epigenetics reveals that our subjective experience is more influential and powerful than our objective reality. Meaning, you could live in the worst environment but have a wonderful experience of perception that says, no, life is really great and wonderful, and you will have a healthy life. Or you can live in the best environment and have a perception that life is threatening and scary in some way, and you'll end up with sickness. And all of a sudden it's like, well, it wasn't the real environment that ultimately made that decision. It was the interpretation, which is the mind, that makes that decision. Whew, that was a lot.
Wow, and you brought that message through about 10 different ways, and I love it because it's such an important message. I think you've got to bring it through about 10 different ways to really get it.
It's hard because we're so concrete in the current beliefs, and that's where the problem comes from. We believe it, and that belief is your perception. So if you believe you're going to get cancer, you can actually manifest the cancer, not because there was any reason to, other than the brain will adjust the chemistry to manifest your perception.
Yeah, such a powerful just set of material. And, of course, you've been a researcher, you're a scientist, and now you're out speaking to the mainstream public about it, and it's so important that you are. Let me bring in one quick comment. There are a bunch of comments here. This is from Beth in Slovenia, who's listening, and she says, I've been so looking forward to hearing Bruce. I read his book, The Biology of Belief, 3 times, and have shared it with many of my friends who need to walk through the science door to be able to hear the message. Thank you. And there are other messages like this from people like Beth, who lives in Slovenia. Bruce, this really important truth that you're bringing through this material from science that says in your book that I think you said 99% of the population, what you call the lay audience, has these disempowering beliefs about our genes. So this whole scenario that you took us through, where you said the old science believed that genes dictated everything. Now there's the new science, epigenetics, that says no, it's very different than that. But in your book, The Biology of Belief, you said the lay audience, 99% of the Earth's population still has the understanding of that we're a victim of our genes. Now, I want to bring in one other thing that really was powerful for me reading your book. You shared as a lecturer, you were out, sharing the new science, epigenetics, all of this material, and at one stage in your career, people said, "Yeah, I hear it, but I don't necessarily see you as transformed," and you didn't use that language in your book. But and you took that to heart, and then you went through internal changes, and then you mentioned you were somewhere else, and somebody said, "My God, what happened to you? What's your name? And what is it about you?" And you took that to mean, you'd gone through. I don't know that you called it a transformation, but you're living this truth that you speak of changing our beliefs and really. And I think you went on in your book to say this is the powerful thing. We've got to live it. We've got to express it. And that's what causes all the dominoes to fall. I'm bringing this in because I think a lot of people get intellectually maybe what you're sharing, that epigenetics is real. We've got to change our beliefs, but they're in that conundrum of how do I internalize this change? How do I go about living it and expressing it?
Well, as you're absolutely right, because once I started to recognize the mechanism of the cell membrane as a computer chip, and the environment was typing on the keyboard called the receptor, so that the cell was responding to environmental signals and adjusting its biology, I thought, oh my God, it's so plainly simple. We just change the way we deal with the world, and we can change our lives. I mean, it accounts for things like spontaneous remissions of disease, where somebody is terminal, but then they have a profound belief change, and all of a sudden the cancer disappears. And it's hard to explain that, except that when I was trying to lecture about the mechanics of it, once I understood the science, and I would say, if you understand what I'm talking about, you can create this most fabulous life. And people in the audience would look at me and tilt their heads and look and go, Lipton, your life doesn't look so good for a guy who says you know this stuff. And I virtually said, and I thank God I didn't, but it came so close to saying, well, do as I say, not as I do. And when I realized, oh my God, if I am so correct about this understanding, then how come with all this knowledge my life is still the same life? It wasn't that great. And that's when the next most important domino fell, and then all the rest of the dominoes just fell right after that one, and that was this. We have an understanding that the mind controls our biology. That's what the chemistry is saying and all that. And then we say, well, I have positive thoughts about I really want to have a great life, and I want to be healthy, and I want to have great relationships. And I go, well, that's great. Your mind has those thoughts. And then you realize, but my life doesn't match these thoughts. And what's the issue? And then here's what I found out, and this was the most important understanding, and that is this. First of all, there are two parts to the mind. One is called the conscious mind. One is called the subconscious mind. They're different in their function, and listen to this, very critical. They're different in the way they learn. This is very critical. So I say, well, what's the difference? And I go, the conscious mind, the latest evolution of the brain, is the seat of your personal identity. Where your spirit is really interfacing your body is through your conscious mind, which is your personal identity playing the system. And that's a late evolution of the brain. Before the conscious mind evolved, the rest of the whole brain was called the subconscious mind, which is like an automatic, reactive, reflexive mind. Not a lot of thinking involved, stimulus response. That's basically how life worked, okay? Well, the issue is this, is that the conscious mind happens to be creative. And this is why the humans have evolved above all the lower organisms, because of the creativity afforded by the conscious mind allows us not just to react and respond to the environment, but allows us to change the environment, which, of course, this is what humans have done, and unfortunately negatively so at this moment. But here's the point. So the conscious mind is creative. It's you. And I say, Steve, tell me what you want from your life. Tell me what you want. Well, the answer you would give me, by definition, would be creative, because you're talking about what would be in the future. So this is what the conscious mind offers, a vision of a future I can create. And I go, okay, so the wishes, desires, and aspirations of your life, this is the function of the conscious mind. What do you want? That's the wishes and desires. And I go, conscious mind. I go, great. And I say, what about subconscious mind? I go, oh, it's not a creative mind very much. It's like a precocious 5-year-old in its creativity. It's not very powerful creative, but it's a habitual mind. It's habits. It plays programs. Push the button, and it will play the program. You learned how to walk once, but now you don't have to think about walking. It's a program. You don't even have to say, I'm going to walk. You just have the intention to go somewhere. The program pushes the button. You walk automatically. It's like driving. At first, when you didn't know how to drive a car, you had to practice, and then you learned how to drive a car. Then you've been driving a car for a long time. Now, guess what? The details that stunned you the first day you sat in the car and realized, oh, my God, there are gauges on the dashboard, mirrors, windows, pedals on the floor, all kinds of things going on. You had to pay a lot of attention. Today, you get in the car, you put the key in the ignition. You can have a passenger in the car. You start, you drive, you're having a conversation. And then many of us have that experience where you look out the window, all of a sudden realize you haven't paid attention to the road for the last 5 or 10 minutes. You've been so involved in your conversation. And the idea is, well, who was driving the car? And the answer is, once you learned how to drive a car, it's a habit. So you don't have to pay attention. You can talk to a person in a car, have a conversation. All the details that were so focused on when you first learned how to drive are now automated. So that's the nature of the habitual subconscious mind. Now here comes the issue, and this is the problem why positive thinking doesn't work. Okay, it's the problem why we have the most difficulty in changing our lives, and it comes like this. The conscious mind is creative. It can learn from listening to the conversation that we're having here, Steve, or you could learn by watching a video, go to a lecture, or you can just go, aha, I got it, and the conscious mind will learn just like that. It's creative. It can learn just like that. The subconscious mind doesn't learn in that way. Subconscious mind learns in three different ways, which I'll talk about in a few minutes, but not the creative way. So you can educate the conscious mind, read the self-help book. And I say, did you really understand it? I'll give you a quiz. Oh, yeah, you got 100 now. You understood all the details of the self-help book. Now I say, is your life any different now that you read the book? The answer is, no, my life is still essentially the same. I'm totally aware of the book, but my life is still the same. And I go, this is the problem. All of us have been educating our conscious minds really, really wonderfully, put all these new ideas and everything, and yet we're still living the same life. That was me giving a lecture a long time ago, saying, look, I learned all these details about how the cell works, it's fabulous and everything, and then the audience looking at me, yeah, but your life hasn't changed. And the reason is this, and here's the crux of the problem of all things comes down to this. The conscious mind is the mind of connected to your identity, your wishes, and desires. It's creative, but here's the problem. It also can think. And why I say, why is that a problem? I go like this, because the moment the conscious mind is thinking about something, by definition, it's not paying attention to the current moment. In other words, if I say, Steve, what are you doing next Thursday? At that moment of your thinking about what you're doing next Thursday, whatever's happening around you is not really being observed by the conscious mind. Conscious mind's busy going through the Rolodex right now. I go, why is that important? Because when the conscious mind is thinking, it's not paying attention. It doesn't mean that whatever you're doing stops. If you're walking down the street and you have a thought, you don't freeze until the thought goes away and then start walking again. If you're walking down the street, you have a thought, walking continues. And here's the point. When the conscious mind is busy, the programs and activities of life are now taken over by the subconscious programs, which are the default. So when the conscious mind's not paying attention, the subconscious programs are the default source of behavior. Now, science has recognized that 95% of the day, the conscious mind is thinking. And you go, oh wow, that's 95% of the day. My creative wishes, desires, positive thinking mind is not paying attention. 95% of the day, it's involved with thinking. Meaning, 95% of the day, my life is controlled by the programs in the subconscious. Now comes the monkey wrench, and that is this: the primary programs in the subconscious are not from your wishes and desires. They were learned by observing other people, your parents, your family, your community, your culture as you were growing up before age 7. There's a reason why. Simply this, as I present in a lecture, I say, look, consider an iPod, this wonderful little device, and you can use the little wheel on the front they call a click wheel, and you can select programs and play. So the click wheel on the iPod is like conscious mind. It's creative. Make a playlist. Oh, good. I'll create one using this wheel, and I'll push play, and then the play. And I go, okay, here's the point. I give you a brand new iPod. You take it out of the box. You push play, and nothing happens. And somebody says, no, you can't. There's nothing to play because you don't have any programs. First you need programs, then you could push play. The mind is exactly the same thing. The conscious mind cannot work unless there are programs to work with. So this is why nature has created the first 7 years of your life where your conscious mind is in download. It's downloading programs that after 7, your conscious mind, when it becomes the predominant form of activity, can use these programs to create life from these programs. So basically it says the download that you get to put the programs in initially, first 7 years of your life, The programs came from observing other people because our brain during the first 7 years of life is predominantly in a EEG activity called theta, which is imagination, and that's why children between 2 and 7 especially mix the real and the imaginary worlds together because their brain is operating at theta, but theta is hypnosis. So that means the fundamental programs in your subconscious are not yours. They came from other people. They don't answer your wishes, your desires, and what you want from life. Now I speed up and I say, today, you're walking down the street, and guess what? Only 5% of the time are you actually controlling your life with wishes and desires, because that's when the conscious mind is present. 95% of the time you're thinking, and as a result, you're playing default programs. I go, yeah, from the subconscious, the storage base of habits. And I go, yeah, but the basic programs of behavior in the subconscious are not yours. They don't express your wishes, your desires, and what you want. They came from other people. 95% of the day we're living other people's lives. We've been programmed. And it's interesting because there's a movie called The Matrix. Most people see that movie, and it's interesting because I say, where is it in the video store? He says, it's in science fiction. I go, oh, it's in the wrong place. The Matrix is a documentary. We've all been programmed, and the programs control our lives. And in the movie, The Matrix, they say, well, if you take this red pill, you can get out of the program. And so now I want to offer something which is the basis of my latest book called The Honeymoon Effect. And that is this, very quickly. No matter what your life is like, no matter how bad things might be or things not working out in your life, the moment you meet someone that you fall in love with, the moment you have that love experience, that head over heels fall in love experience, something changes in your life profoundly. Because from that moment on, for the next little bit of time, I refer to this period of your life as the honeymoon. The honeymoon is when you're excited by love. You're healthy, you have energy, and life is so beautiful during this honeymoon period, which is generally short-lived, that your life is so beautiful while you're in this honeymoon love experience that it's tantamount to being in heaven. Heaven on earth. My God, it's like, wait a second, my life really sucked. I met this person, and now all of a sudden I got heaven on earth. This is really great. And you say, well, what a coincidence, what an accident. I go, no, here's the science. It is the one time in your life where you become mindful, meaning you keep your conscious mind in the forefront. You keep it present for a simple reason. Everything you were dreaming about and wanting about in a love affair is now in front of your face, so why would you let your mind wander when everything is there? So you are operating from mindfulness. You're operating from conscious mind. I go, yeah, well, what's conscious mind? Wishes, desires, aspirations. When two people come together, and they're operating from wishes and desires, what do you think they manifest? Wishes and desires. It's called heaven on earth. And the significance about that is it's the one time in your life you don't default to the programs that you received in the first 7 years of your life. You're operating strictly from wishes and desires. And what does it mean? It's taking the red pill. You've eliminated the program. I say, what happened when you eliminated the program? You created heaven on earth. And I go, yeah, but unfortunately, the honeymoon ends. And you go, why did the honeymoon end? I go, because life gets busy, inevitably. Even if you're in love, you still got to pay the rent. You got to fix the car. You start thinking about, oh, my God, what am I going to do? What are my chores? And your partner, you're having this great heaven on earth experience with, comes up, asks you a simple question, and your thought is into fixing the car. You turn around and respond, and you get a simple question, a loving question, and you go turn around and respond, go blah, blah, blah. And your partner looks at you going, who are you? Where did that come from? Well, this is the beginning of the end of the honeymoon. Let me tell you what happened. What happened was your mind was busy. Therefore, you defaulted to the subconscious program. Oh, yeah, the subconscious program, let's say if you're a male, you probably primarily were programmed by your father. So all of a sudden, you responded to your partner in the way your father responded to your mother in this particular case. And it may have been a very, not loving thing at all. Your partner experiences is, oh, my God, he just blah-blahed me right here. I can't believe this. And then your partner says to you, well, what kind of behavior is that? And this is the part where the problems come from. The part is, if your mind was busy thinking about fixing the car, the conscious mind, and you defaulted to the subconscious programming, then by definition, your conscious mind did not see the behavior you just played. And you've now been accused of, what kind of behavior is that? And you're trying to think of, what's that person talking about? What are they talking about? What do you mean? I've always been who I am. I don't know what they're talking about, because you didn't even see what you just did. It's invisible. So 95% of your behavior is invisible, and it comes from other people. And if it's self-sabotaging, which psychologists tell us 70% of these programs are, then that means invisibly during the day, you are sabotaging your life, and you have no conscious awareness of it because your conscious mind was busy in thought, and you were default programming from the subconscious. And this, finally, is where the problems of our world come from today. Because basically it says this: the world doesn't work the way we would like it to work. It doesn't look like heaven on earth. It looks like hell at many of the times here. And I go, yeah, but here's the problem. Your conscious mind, which has your wishes and desires, only plays 5%. Your subconscious is running 95%. The behavior that's in there, not yours, doesn't support anything you wish or desire, and you're operating from this, and you don't see it. Why is this a problem? Because this is where we acquire the victim. I'm a victim. Why? Well, I wanted to be healthy, and I wanted to have great relationships, and I wanted all this wonderful thing. Look at my life. It doesn't have those things in it. So it's not me. I'm the one that wanted all the good things, and look what I ended up with. And therefore, we, rightfully at that moment say to the world's against me. It's not in my fate to have success or health. It's not in my cards to have that. And I go, oh, my God, this is why we perceive we are victims of things outside of our control, is because we've been blind to the fact that 95% of our behavior that we express is A, unseen by us because it's coming from the subconscious when our conscious is busy, and B, the programs in that subconscious are primarily not from us, they're from other people. So we're not living our lives. The only time you fully are living the life that you want is when you fall in love. At that moment, you're being mindful and you're not playing programs. And until life gets busy, that period called the honeymoon, you are actually manifesting heaven on earth. And then the bottom line conclusion is, but you can rewrite the programs. And if you rewrite the programs so that the subconscious programs are now programs that support your wishes and desires, what would be the result? And the answer is, you would have a honeymoon experience every day of your life on this planet for as long as you lived. And that was given to us, but we lost it.
I'm going to, that's a perfect place to end, and I apologize.
I don't want to end,
Bruce, but boy, I know, oh gosh, so much wisdom. We need to just go into wrap up because we've only actually got 3 minutes. But just fascinating and so much wisdom, and I'm glad you brought in this book, that the honeymoon effect, because I know it explains all of this in more detail. So I want to recommend that, the honeymoon effect, to people. Bruce, what website can people go to learn more about you and your programs?
Oh, it's so simple, brucelipton.com.
brucelipton.com, okay.
There's lots of articles and resources and all kinds of things available on the website.
So go to brucelipton.com. I know we've got a large listening audience here. Questions and comments have been pouring in. Thank you to all of you listeners who have been putting questions and comments in the window about Bruce and his books and the summit. Wow, so much interaction and such a great audience for this program. I want to thank also just all of you, the listeners that have been here for the summit, for this program this day. But for all 9 days to this point, we do have free replays on all of the programs for 48 hours, so I want to encourage you to go check out those free replays. And for those of you that want to come back to wisdom again and again, such as what this program with Bruce, that was so amazing, that had so much profound information that was shared and metaphor and more, we do have these upgrade packages with the $100 discount during the summit. That has the MP3s, the transcripts, and the CDs. So I invite you to check out the upgrade page. Bruce Lipton, thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing your wisdom, for expressing love. As I shared in my introduction of you, you are an expression of your work. So you're such a perfect model to be out talking about epigenetics, biology, and to be a way shower, because you not only talk about it, you're living it, and of course that's the most powerful way to teach anything. So you were magnificent, and thank you so much. I also want to thank my colleagues, Dee Meyer and Nanette Kennedy, two key leaders who are helping this whole program to be in existence, this Living in Oneness Summit. And lastly, again, coming back to you, the listeners, thank you for prioritizing this summit so that we can all really come alive, fully come alive as part of the divine that we are. Thank you so much. This concludes our program for today. Tomorrow morning, Friday the 16th, we're going to open up at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time. That's Los Angeles time, with Hazel Henderson, who's going to talk about her work in ethical markets. And then after that, Gay and Katie Henderson are coming on, and they're going to talk about conscious loving. And they're just incredible leaders in this area of living in oneness with our significant other. That's at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So make sure to come back tomorrow for those two programs. And then on Saturday, Kenji Kimura, Peter Mathis, and George Cow are the three speakers. And we're also going to have a program where we give away one or more of the silver packages to listeners that are interacting with us during the day. So be sure to come Saturday to hear these three speakers and participate in that program. So thank you to all of you. Have a magnificent day. We'll be back in the morning. And Bruce Lipton, again, thank you so much. You were fabulous. And
I so appreciate it, Steve. And I just want to acknowledge the audience again, because the evolution that we're facing is really participation. Each one of us really has to take back our power, and that the people listening are very important, because they're the cultural creatives. They're the people that are looking for answers outside of the box, and that's what we need right now. So my deepest appreciation to everyone on the line. Thank you.
That's a perfect note to end it on. Yes, take back our power. We are the co-creators. We're not victims, and now is the time. So, Bruce, thank you. And we look forward to being in touch with you soon. And listeners, participants, we'll see you in the morning. Have a great day. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.